Welcome to Sports from the Couch.
I gotta say, it's the stupidest thing in sports.
With your host, Mike Mercado.
Players cannot stand him. Coaches cannot stand him. Most importantly, the fans can't stand him.
Brought to you by Mercado Airwaves.
I'm gonna say it once, and hopefully I'm wrong, but it's a disaster waiting to happen.
That is so bad, that is absolutely brutal.
Hello and welcome in, friends, to another edition of Sports from the Couch here on Mercado Airwaves. I'm your host, Mike Mercado. I want to thank you so much for making us a part of your day. It is a beautiful Monday, August 17, 2020, in the greatest city in the world, Chicago, Illinois, and we have a very busy show to get to today. But before we get to the main headlines, let's go ahead and take care of some housekeeping notes. You can follow me on Twitter at Mike M Media. I'm also on Instagram at Mike Mercado Media. You can be interactive with the show on Twitter. The show's at Couch Sports Talk. Like, rate, review, and share us wherever you get your favorite podcast at Mercado Airwaves. Become a producer of the network. Get early access to content and our interviews ad-free and before anybody else with athletes and celebrities at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves. We have swag if you want to rep Mercado Airwaves and all the shows on the network. Visit us at teespring.com/Mercado Airwaves. Like us on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves. Subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/Mercado Airwaves Network. And come play video games with us on Twitch, twitch.tv/Mercado Airwaves Network. Okay, friends, so let's start off this week with NBA playoff predictions. That is right. The association's playoffs finally begin in the bubble down in Florida, and we have some awesome matchups. I made some predictions for sure. I'm going to get most of these wrong, but it's always fun to make a couple picks and see how far and how many we can get correct. And I guess we're going to start with the Western Conference, and we'll go by each matchup. I have made the picks. And then I have this bracket. I'll actually post it up later on throughout the week. But I have the bracket. I'll make the picks in the first round. And then I'll give you my potential matchups in the next following rounds up until the finals. And then who I have winning the entire thing. So we start off in the Western Conference. The 1 versus the 8. It is the Lakers taking on the scorching hot Portland Trailblazers. Portland beat Memphis in that play-in game after a great run in the bubble along with Phoenix. And you know, we saw a lot of stars show up, by the way, before we get into the actual matchup between Devin Booker, John Morant, and Portland going off. A lot of teams that people wouldn't see normally that weren't in the bubble, that weren't in prime time during this pandemic. We wouldn't have seen these guys. So that's one of the benefits of this. And it was one of the things that really disappointed me about the Bulls not being able to play any scrimmage games is they weren't able to not just mingle and try to recruit, but we didn't get to see a lot of these talents, and they weren't able to get showcased at this time during summer. But with that being said, we do have the matchup of the Lakers and Portland. So this is what's interesting about this matchup. Everybody wanted to see it because they think this is the toughest out for the Lakers of all the potential matchups in the first round, which it is. But you have to be honest with everything. As hard as Dame has been playing, an absolute killer, McCollum has been dealing with injury, and you have Carmelo making this run. They aren't with Trevor Ariza. This is not the deepest of teams. This is a team that's going to have to score a lot of points. This is a team that's been on survival mode for weeks now at this point. How much left is in the tank? I don't know. I mean, these are superstars. Dame is a superstar, so maybe he's going to be able to will himself into a series victory. But you start looking at the Lakers, who have not looked all that great in this bubble. They look like they're still trying to figure things out. And that's a really easy analysis to make about this team. But it's true. Like, it's what your eyes show you. What we are basing everything when it comes to the Lakers is pure talent. We know LeBron James not only can win titles, but he could completely dominate the entire playoffs and lead them right on his own back without anybody's help to a championship. But last year was the first year we've seen him deal with injuries. So there's been a little bit more doubt in our mind about whether he can continue to do that. He is getting so much older. He does have so many miles just off his entire career, always being in the playoffs, always being in the finals. The reason I say that is because it's going to come down to Anthony Davis, and it's going to come down to the other guys like Kuzma, who are going to have to help LeBron get to the NBA Finals. And that's why this matchup, more than any of the other ones, when it comes to a first round, very interesting. And how I think it's actually a really easy pick. But it could easily also go right on its head because Portland could just blow up everybody's bracket. But I have the Lakers beating Portland in that series and moving on. In the 4-5 matchup, this is a true pick'em. The Houston Rockets, the Oklahoma City Thunder, Chris Paul taking on his old team. Russell Westbrook will not be in this series, it looks like, with that injury. Might not be throughout the entire playoffs. There's still some reports going back and forth about this. Again, it's Houston could put up a bunch of points. Can they stop anybody? Chris Paul, again, is one of these dudes who always proves me wrong. I always want to fall in love with Chris Paul. And then I go back to, well, it just seems like he's one of these guys that can't get that team to that next level. Whether no fault of his own or not. I mean, it's how many guys win an NBA championship, honestly. It's just in a league full of superstars and him being marketed as one of the main superstars, him being one of the lead voices all these years, I always put so much more expectation on him. And for the most part, he's proven it. MVPs, All-Stars, one of the greatest ever, Hall of Famer. But I'm specifically talking about NBA Finals, that type of prestige. And I actually think in this series, OKC moves on. I think this is the real dismantle of Houston. And with the injuries and everything that's going on, Houston could have been a fun team, if healthy, if running on all cylinders. But they're not. And in this bubble, I think a team like OKC with a smart point guard who's facilitating the ball and all his guys coming together, I think OKC wins this one in a 7-game series. But I think this one is going to be a really tight series. This one could completely steal the entire first round. We continue on. We have the 3-6 matchup. It is the number 3 seed, the Denver Nuggets taking on the Utah Jazz. This is a matchup where how is Utah going to put up points? I like Utah. I love Devin Mitchell. I actually really want him to be on the radar for the Chicago Bulls. Rudy Gobert, obviously a defensive star in this league. But where else are they going to get points? And Denver is a fun team. I like Michael Porter Jr. I like Joker. One of the things I really want to see from Denver is how well Jamal Murray plays with that matchup against Devin Mitchell. You know, we've seen the emergence of Michael Porter Jr., who I've been a big fan of for a long time. He was one of these guys I thought the Bulls should have taken a risk on a few years ago in that draft, even if he wasn't going to play. But this, again, it's a straight pick'em game. But I think Denver has more talent. Denver knows how to score in more ways and are a deeper team. But again, just like that other matchup between Houston and OKC, this is where the meat of the conference is. And this is where the heavy hitters are going to take each other out. And we're seeing these battles. You know, we know what the 1 and 2 seeds are doing in the Western Conference, but right here, this is the true battle of the West, and it's going to be fun to see Denver versus Utah, but I have Denver coming out in that series. And in the 2-7 matchup, star power in this games. That's what this series has between the Clippers and the Mavericks. Star power all over the place. But I think this is a one-sided series. I think the Clippers win this in about 5 games. I think Luka Doncic has a great showing in the playoffs. I think Kristaps Porzingis is a great B to that A, but there is nobody else on that Dallas team. And the Clippers, this is a great series for the Clippers to really not just get right, but get focused. They're going to be able to play one team. They are in the playoffs. Like whether it felt like a playoff atmosphere in the bubble, it wasn't like that for the Clippers. The Clippers knew where they were going to be at to begin with. So I think this is a great moment for that team, especially with the guys on that team, to get on the same mindset and be able to have one goal in mind, one target in mind. And this is a great way for them to do that in an opponent like Dallas, which is going to give them some matchup problems when it comes to Luka and Porzingis, but not enough danger, I think. So I have the Clippers coming out in that one. And with that, I'll give you the second round matchup then. I have the LA Lakers over the Portland Trailblazers. I have the Oklahoma City Thunder over Houston. I have the Nuggets over the Jazz and the Clippers over Dallas, giving us a LA versus OKC matchup and a Denver versus Clippers matchup. I think in that scenario, Lakers versus OKC, again, now at this point, it just becomes too much for one team to handle. Chris Paul can only do so much. I think the Lakers move on to the Western Conference Finals. And in a very fun matchup with the Nuggets and the Clippers, this has the potential to go all 7. This has a really scary potential to really mess up a lot of people's Clippers bets in Vegas. I think the Clippers come out in that series. As nice as the talent is of Denver, I think they're still too young. And I think when push comes to shove, a team with Lou Williams, Paul George, and of course Kawhi Leonard, that's just too much especially being led by a head coach like Doc Rivers. So in our Western Conference matchup, I have the Los Angeles Lakers taking on the LA Clippers. And we'll get to that in just 1 second. As we get to the Eastern Conference, we have at the number 1 seed, the Bucks taking on the number 8 seed, Orlando. This one just comes down to how much is Giannis going to put up? Can anybody help him on that team? Is Middleton an actual all-star? We'll have to find out all these answers. This is not the test for them, though. This one should go maybe about 5. I have the Bucks on that one. What a matchup next. The number 4 Indiana Pacers, the number 5 Miami Heat, a true rivalry from the 90s to this time. Warren and Butler. This is a fun one. Miami is deep. Dragic and Albadeo, and they have a lot of good guys in that team. I like Miami. I think Indiana is playing the best, and if Oladipo stays healthy, Warren keeps going off, this team has a chance to actually make a run at the conference finals. But the real question at the end of this series is, we know that the Pacers have multiple ways to score and multiple guys that can carry their team. The real question is, who's going to help Miami if Jimmy Butler gets shut down? Or whatever, for whatever it's worth, Jimmy Butler can't take over a game. That's the thin line of this series right here. It's as simple as that. For the longest time, I was going Miami in this one. But as of this recording, I'm actually changing my mind. I'm going with the Pacers beating the Heat. I think there's just too much on that team. I think TJ Warren's been having a great bubble. And all it takes is for Jimmy Butler to have one bad game. And if somebody else doesn't step up, I think the Pacers go ahead and win that series. So I have the Pacers over the Heat. In the 3-6 matchup, we have Boston versus Philly with no Ben Simmons and what is a wild card with Joel Embiid. I have to go with the team with Kemba, Tatum, and Brown. I think this is another series where they know each other very well. I think there's much more pressure on Philadelphia. You know, you have the head coach who's wearing in Brett Brown that might get fired if this doesn't go well. And there's a lot of pressure on Joel Embiid. That's what it comes down to. And who's going to help him out? I think Boston wins that series. And in our final first-round series, the defending NBA champions, the Toronto Raptors, take on the Brooklyn Nets. Toronto, probably the best team played basketball in the Eastern Conference. Brooklyn, shout out to them for just showing up. Nobody on their team. Awesome performance for them in the bubble. But I have Toronto moving on, which gives us a second-round matchup of the number 1 seed, the Milwaukee Bucks, taking on the number 4 seed, the Indiana Pacers. This is a hell of a matchup. What it really comes down to in this matchup is, can Milwaukee's defense come back up from where it was before the bubble? They were one of the better defensive teams before that happened. But it wasn't as big of a deal in the first round. At least it shouldn't be. But in this game, in this series against the Pacers, Chris Middleton and Eric Bledsoe need to help out Giannis. And you need guys like Brook and Robin Lopez to hit, to get the rebounds. You need guys to hit their shots. You need people to give Giannis some time to breathe. And here's the thing. Indiana is going to pound these guys down. They're going to be in their faces. They're going to grind them. They're going to be annoying. They know how to do that. I think the Bucks move on, but this is a dangerous series. This is the equivalent of what it's going to be for the Clippers against Denver. But I have Milwaukee getting past Indiana and moving to the conference finals. And in another great matchup, we have Boston versus Toronto. I think Toronto is playing the best basketball in the bubble. I think Toronto has the best team basketball going right now. I have Toronto moving on, beating Boston. That's going to be a fun matchup, giving us a rematch of last year's Eastern Conference Finals, the Milwaukee Bucks taking on the Toronto Raptors. And we have our conference final matchups, friends. We have the LA Lakers taking on the LA Clippers for the Western Conference Finals, and the Milwaukee Bucks taking on the Toronto Raptors in the Eastern Conference Finals, giving you my NBA final prediction matchup of the Milwaukee Bucks taking on the Los Angeles Clippers. And in the NBA Finals, I have, in a 6-game series, the LA Clippers winning the NBA Finals and Paul George becoming your NBA Finals MVP. Let me know your thoughts. Who do you have winning the NBA Finals? Do you have any upsets? I'm on Twitter at Mike M Media. I'm on Instagram at Mike Mercado Media. And you can follow the show on Twitter at Couch Sports Talk. Next up, friends, we take a couple swings here on the diamond, and we talk some Cubs and White Sox. I want to start off with a little love for the Chicago White Sox before we get to some deep dive of some recent struggle of your Chicago Cubs. Interesting Sunday afternoon for the good guys on the south side.
Oh, in the air left field. Eloy Jimenez to the line and gone again. 4 in a row.
That's right. Back to back jacks for the Chicago White Sox as they beat the St. Louis Cardinals 7-2 on Sunday. But we had to talk a little bit about the Cardinals, who absolutely had an awesome weekend against the White Sox, winning their doubleheader, 5-1 game 1 and 6-3 game 2. But the White Sox coming back and winning on Sunday. So interested to see how the Cardinals responded after all the stuff that's going on with COVID-19 and their ball club. But we move on from the south side. I want to go to the north side for just a little bit. Over this past 4-game series, the Chicago Cubs dropped 3 of 4 against Milwaukee. They won on Thursday 4-2, but lost on Friday 4-3, Saturday 6-5, and on Sunday 6-5 as well. The bullpen played all right. Starting pitching was pretty decent. I really want to talk about this offense, and more specifically, Chris Bryant and Javi Baez. Both have not looked really good at the plate. And now we see Chris Bryant has this wrist injury. And it's the first time in the 2020 season we've really seen this team have some type of adversity on the field. It was just recently, just a few days ago, that they had to deal with their first run-in with COVID and postponement due to another ball club. Now, internally, they've done a really good job of being a healthy team. By all reports and everything being equal, it seems like they're the team that's been a gold standard when it comes to protocol. But this is one of the first times that they've dealt with any type of hiccup in the actual season with play on the field. And we could talk about the early hiccups of the bullpen in the beginning of the season, but this seems a little bit more different. This seems much more part of the season. And the reason why I'm addressing it a little bit more seriously in comparative to if this was 162 games is because it's a 60-game season. And I mentioned that when you're riding the highs of a season like this for a team, you have to go with the lows as well, because they do mean something. And when you had such a big lead and you were putting a lot of spacing between you and these teams while you were winning these games, and then when it came to head-to-head matchups and you drop a couple and one of the other teams wins a couple as well, that's when it becomes a little bit more important on top of every game almost mattering, especially right now. So when you lose to the Brewers 3 of 4 and you have the Cardinals bouncing back and winning 2 of 3, it means a lot. I wonder if it puts more pressure on this ball club. I don't think it's going to. That's easy for us as fans or pundits or analysis or anything like that, right? But an actual player on the field, I don't know if they're actually feeling that pressure. John Lester says, yeah and no. You feel it sometimes, but you don't. You know how serious it is, but you also realize the inherent spirit of the game. Now, for Chris Bryant and Javi Baez, you trust both of them. But this was always the issue I had about picking one or the other. To me, Chris Bryant is, once he gets right, the consistency factor is going to stay there. Javi's swing has always been a real issue. It comes and goes. And I'm not just talking about hot streaks and cold streaks. I'm talking about mechanically speaking. And he hasn't looked right at the plate. Now, this is me speaking on standards of Javi Baez levels. He's looked good on the field, obviously. That glove never disappears. But this is the first time where not only is the team struggling, but now some of the superstars are really struggling. And now we have another case of Chris Bryant having an injury. And if you're looking for more specifics, in 13 games, you got Chris Bryant batting 196, an on-base percentage of 305, slugging 373, an OPS of 678, and at leadoff. I wonder how much that has to deal with it, if anything. And then we go to Baez in 18 games, batting 205, on-base percentage of 244, slugging 370, OPS of 613, worse than Bryant. Neither one really hitting for power. Javi with 3 home runs, Chris Bryant with only 2. What's really interesting, though, about the Cubs lineup specifically is it's not the guys you would think that are carrying this team offensively. I mean, look at this. It's Jason Hayward. It's Ian Happ. It's Victor Carantini. It's a little bit of Kyle Schwarber. It's not Anthony Rizzo, Chris Bryant, Javi Baez. These aren't the guys who are carrying them. Now, obviously, they've all been sprinkled in and they've done their thing, but it's not what you think it is when you're watching this team win. It's really been the starting pitching that has really made this team from a good team to one of the elite teams that can maybe win a championship when all things are going right. Again, the numbers speak for themselves. Look at this. Kyle Hendricks, a 3.08 ERA, and that's the worst on the staff. You have Yu Darvish at 1.88. Alec Mills at 2.84. If it wasn't for one bad pitch against Christian Yelich, the Cubs go 2-2 in that series. John Lester, that was a rough outing, but again, has had a pretty good season with a 1.06 ERA. Now, Tyler Chatwood is on the IL, but you're getting Quintana back, which is going to help eat up innings. But all this being said, now is another big test in this season for the Cubs, and they're coming quick. You have 2 day-night doubleheaders against the Cardinals, 5 games in 3 days. Now, this is a chance where you bounce back from a bad weekend, you get that out of mind, and now you bury the Cardinals. You get them done, out of the way, you don't worry about them. You win 4 of the 5, 3 of the 5. Take the day-night doubleheader today and get that pressure off of you. Make sure you guys are following me on Twitter at Mike M Media, Instagram Mike Mercado Media, and the network at Mercado Airwaves, along with the show at Couch Sports Talk, when we find out today's starting lineup and the pitching matchup. First pitch is 4:15 p.m. here in Chicago, and Game 2's first pitch will be at 7:15. And for the Chicago White Sox, tonight's game against the Tigers will be at 7:10 p.m. first pitch. Lastly, before we close shop on this Monday, the Chicago Blackhawks survived Game 4 and live for another day as they beat the Las Vegas Golden Knights 3-1 this past Sunday. And what a game by Corey Crawford, 48 saves. The story of the series is how many more shots on goal the Knights have over the Blackhawks, and Corey Crawford is trying to keep this team in this series. So shout out to Crow, who, just a month ago was suffering from COVID-19 and now dominating in a National Hockey League playoff game against the best team in the league. But we have ourselves a Game 5 on Tuesday, August 25th, 2020. Puck drop 9:30 p.m. Central Time here in the city of Chicago as the Blackhawks take on the Las Vegas Golden Knights, trying to force a Game 6, which will be Thursday if the Blackhawks can survive till then. But that'll do it for us, friends, on this edition of Sports from the Couch here on Mercado Airwaves. Thank you so much for making us a part of your day. Follow me on Twitter at Mike M Media. I'm on Instagram at Mike Mercado Media. And you can follow the show on Twitter at Couch Sports Talk. Like, rate, review, and share us wherever you get your favorite podcast at Mercado Airwaves. Become a producer of the network at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves. There you can get our interviews ad-free and before anybody else with athletes and celebrities at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves. And we have swag, friends. Help support the network and find a t-shirt you like from your favorite show at teespring.com/Mercado Airwaves. Enjoy all the games. Take care of each other. We will see you next time here on Sports from the Couch on the Mercado Airwaves Network. I'm Mike Mercado.